night, which was yesterday. And what a night of college football it was.
Yeah, they're so what surprised me, not much about the Big Ten game. The Penn State Purdue, I thought Penn State would win. They did. Purdue looked like a decent team, though. That's not to say they Aiden O'Connell looked all right. They showed up, and it was a battle. Both teams had to play a full game there. Minnesota looked like I expected them to look. They had the ball for about 3/4 of that game. They ran the ball extremely well. And I think the Gophers are going to be good this year. But I also don't think yesterday showed us that yet. New Mexico State's not going to be the test that we need to see them win.
No, and that's, if you remember week 0, we were talking about them because they played Nevada. And they actually had a really good showing against Nevada compared to what the spread was,
Yes.
They were close up till the end there,
Yeah.
especially when they swapped the quarterback. That made a difference. But
yes.
Not meaning to interrupt your thought, but I definitely wanted to throw that out there.
That's good. That's good. But I think this will probably be PJ Fleck's best chance for them to win the West since he's been there. And that's a combination of they're pretty good. They're really old. They have all kinds of veterans on that roster. And I don't think the West is that great this year. Iowa and Wisconsin are going to be good, but not their best. Nebraska might not have a coach come Thanksgiving. Illinois is one of the games I got wrong last week that you got 5 over on me. But I still don't see Illinois being more than a 7-win team this year.
They have a very tough schedule.
They do, yes, and that's
having to play in that specific the division in that conference. I think is kind of the key to them.
Agreed.
And because you got they play with Ohio. They're in the same division as Ohio State and Michigan State and Penn State. Correct.
I think Illinois is in the West, aren't they?
Check that.
Okay.
I got my Phil Steele guide this week.
Perfect. Yep. It's a great magazine for those of you.
I'm getting them mixed up with Indiana because they're playing Indiana. That's what I was thinking.
They are playing Indiana, yes.
No, you're right.
But I still, as much as I think Bielema is a fine coach, it ended poorly at Arkansas, but he's still a guy who typically coaches teams that run the ball well and play pretty good defense. I think Illinois gets better, but I still think their peak this year is 4th best in the West.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing too. It is the schedule. So they got Michigan and Michigan State on the other side. Mm-hmm. So they have Wisconsin to get through, and they got Iowa to get through. And I guess you could make a case now for Northwestern, because it's the last several years. It's been even years. They've been really good.
Yes.
Odd years they haven't. So you kind of have that going there too. That it is tough. It's going to be tough for them to win those 7 games because I don't think they're going to beat Michigan. I don't think they're going to beat Michigan State.
No. And I think Mel Tucker is one of the best coaches in the country. He's fantastic. Mm-hmm. I don't think the Spartans will be that great this year, but they're still tough for anybody to play, and they can win on their day. They're going to be solid.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I think last year they just hit the perfect storm of they got the bell cow they could hand the ball to 30 times a game, and that won them a lot of games. And their defense was stout.
Their defense was very stout. Yeah. They got a lot of those guys back too.
They do.
So that defense is going to be. In fact, it's actually reloaded a little bit too because they've added some really nice transfers in there, especially Austin Aaron Brule from Mississippi State. I really like him as a linebacker. He's a really good guy. And I think there's another guy that they have there too. He's not defense. He's off running back from Colorado, Jarek
Broussard. Yeah. They also got a running back that was at Wisconsin too.
Yeah, that's true. Their running back room is so loaded right now that they really don't need the bell cow. They can just kind of run their rotation and they'll be fine.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I guess
another decent one they got. Hate to leave out the big nasties up front, but Brian Green, a guard from Washington State, came over. He'll be a pretty good Big Ten player, I think, especially with the way those teams like to run the ball. He'll fit in well.
So last night, I think the biggest question mark that I came away with was, where the fuck was number 12? So in case you didn't see the game, West Virginia fell behind by 7 points on a pick six deflection of JT Daniels after Kadon Slovis had taken the team down the field and tied it at 31. Number 12 is DJ Stevenson, who's a running back, a freshman running back at West Virginia, who was averaging like almost 20 yards a carry. He was unstoppable last night. And with 2.5 minutes left to go, they go back on the field to go drive down to try to tie the game at least with Pittsburgh. And number 12 is nowhere to be found. And
I think I can answer that reason why.
Where's number 12?
So my guess would be, you said he's a freshman there, and he had a heck of a game. Typically, most incoming freshman running backs are not good in pass protection. That's because they've never had to be. Most running backs that are going to the P5, they're 30 carry a game guys in high school. All they have to do is run the ball. He probably isn't up to speed on their playbook and their pass pro, especially when you're in a hurry-up situation where you got to get going. It might be something they're not comfortable having him do. And based on how they protected the passer that last drive, you can see why, because they weren't very good at it.
That crossed my mind, but I think the other thing that I was thinking was, why not go with just hand him the ball? You had 2.5 minutes. You had 2 timeouts in your pocket. Just hand him the ball. They can't stop him. You're probably going to go score that touchdown in 2 minutes. But that's
a tough bet. That's tough.
Yeah. So is getting JT Daniels to drive down the field to tie the game at 38. That's a tough bet too. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I would have been more comfortable seeing number 12 carry the ball, because they had, the Pitt defense had no answer for him. Pitt was exhausted at that point. And if you wanted to grind and pound them into submission, that's what I would have done. Personally,
I just don't know if time was on their side to sustain a drive like that.
There was 2.5 minutes.
But if you don't get a first down,
2.5 minutes, if you're getting 15 yards a carry,
that's not sustainable though. You can't anticipate he's going to keep getting that every play. And if he gets a carry that's 7 or 8 yards, you eat up 20 to 30 seconds each time in getting everybody back before the next snap. Now,
well, the real mistake, speaking seriously now, the real mistake was when JT Daniels takes that sack with, I want to say 35. No, there's a minute left to go in the game, and they don't call a timeout there. They still had their 2 timeouts.
Agree. Yeah.
There's no timeout called there. There needed to be a timeout called right there, especially, because that right tackle had multiple false starts throughout the entire game, including one on that drive that backed him up 5 yards. So he surrendered the sack, if I remember correctly, because I guess, he would get credit for surrendering the sack. It was his gap. They overloaded it, and he
was that the first one or the second one on the drive?
This would have been the first one.
Okay,
yeah. The first one, that was on him. It comes through his gap.
Because the second one was more interior. I remember that.
Yeah. And granted, it was an overload. They overloaded his gap, and they brought a lot of pressure there. And that was kind of the idea, was to try to get a free rusher. But that's the thing, is he had just given up the false start, 35 yards back ago. And then the sack goes through, saying, call the timeout there, at least just to calm them down. That's what I was thinking was, you got to get that guy calmed down. You got to get everybody on that team to settle down and go, okay, here's what we're going to do. We got a minute. We still got a timeout. Let's call this play. Let's line up correctly. Let's make sure we got our protection right. And they didn't do that. They rushed, and 25 seconds comes off the clock, and you're heaving a 4th and 16 throw to the end zone.
And in the moment, I thought the exact same thing. Like they should have used a timeout there. It seemed like the right situation. To Neil Brown's credit, though, you could play a devil's advocate and say, had they completed that 4th down pass, the timing would have been perfect, because you'd have been on the 2 or so, and you could have played for the last play to make sure Pitt didn't get the ball back. Now, I'm not saying he drew it up that way. I think that was more just a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
But had they completed that, then the timing would have been great. So, yeah.
I was not impressed. I think with that final drive,
I wasn't impressed with either team too much, to be honest.
Well, yeah, no, to be honest, I think we were kind of talking about it on Twitter the entire game, I think, but I know I definitely was.
It was a typical, and every year you say this about a couple games, that if you would watch it from the beginning with no context, you would know it was an early season game, and you would have known last night was an early season game. There was a lot of those mental mistakes and breakdowns where it seemed like guys just weren't on the same page as their teammates.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of everything. But all right, so let's kind of get into tomorrow. And let's get started with your first pick, good sir. As we discussed, I think it would be best if you started and kick things off.
I will start with one of the games I think some people might disagree with. And that is our game taking place in the Alamo Dome, San Antonio, tomorrow. I like Houston -5.5 over the Roadrunners. I've always been a Holgorsen fan. Clayton Tune's a heck of a QB, and Matthew Golden's going to be a good receiver. They got a lot of guys coming in there. I like the Cougs to get it done.
Yeah. I'm putting 5 points on that, 100%. Okay. So that's it. That's interesting because I think I get the point about Clayton Tune, and I guess by AAC standards, he is a great quarterback. I think my biggest question with Houston is replacing everybody that they lost on defense would be the first thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the receivers too. Because Marquez Stevenson, he just left this year, if I'm remembering correctly, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you just lost Marquez Stevenson. He was that kind of guy. That secondary is depleted terribly. Both your starting corners are gone. And one of them was, all conference player, really probably should have been all American. I absolutely love that guy. And Jones.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is UTSA lost essentially no one.
Yeah.
And this was the 12-win team last year.
Yeah. Frank Harris is a good QB.
He's by Conference USA standards, he is a very good QB.
Yeah.
By the receiving core is very deep. They got a lot of talent. There's a lot of production that they didn't lose there. The running back, they added Traylon Smith.
Yeah.
I really like UTSA doing this one straight up. I think winning it straight up. But definitely I would take 5.5 on that. 100%.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
So that's what concerns me with Houston. There's so many pieces that are lost. It's opening week. You're coming back to a team. And that was the thing, was going into last year too with UTSA. If you remember, they played 12 games during the COVID year. They played a full schedule, 13.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
they were the only team to have done that, and they brought back most of those players that did that. Yeah. So this is really, for that team, their third year together.
There can't be many teams in the country who return more career starts individually than they do. They return a lot. Now, funny, we talked about Minnesota. Minnesota has to be up there too because they got 4 sixth-year offensive guys that I can think of.
Tanner Morgan has just been playing college football since like the Reagan administration.
Exactly. Yeah. Both guards in the center are 6th-year guys too up there. But I thought you might disagree on the UTSA one. I just really like Houston. I've even when Holgorsen has been at his arrogant worst, and he's standoffish. He's a different cat, but he's a good coach. And I think Houston's going to be pretty solid this year. I think they'll throw the ball well. I think they'll run with Tajon Henry when they have to, even though they do have injuries at that position, which will hurt them. I think they'll be an all right team this year, as both of these teams were good last year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But Cougars -5.5 was my first pick.
So I like North Carolina 1.5 as the underdogs to Appalachian State. Now, when Mac Brown took that job, did you ever think that you would hear those words combined? Underdog and Appalachian State when talking about North Carolina.
Yeah, that's
when I saw this, I could not believe my eyes. I was like, wait, you mean to tell me Appalachian State, which just lost a bunch of their receivers, I guess the quarterback comes back. They got a nice running back too. I like him, but lost their receivers. They lost all their star defensive players except for Stephen Jones, who returned for some odd reason at cornerback. In North Carolina, yeah, I understand North Carolina lost Sam Howell, but North Carolina's had a warm-up week. They have one of the best receivers in the country in Josh Downs, who's he might. I don't think he's going to be a first-round pick. I think he's going to be more like a second or a third next year, but he has the potential. And I say potential because we've seen some of the receivers that have gone in the first round in recent memory. Josh Downs definitely stands with some of them.
Yeah, so, him and A.T. Perry for me are by far the two best receivers in that conference this year. They're good players.
No, A.T. Perry I agree. I like A.T. Perry too, the size and speed and just everything. Yeah, but no, so you have. I understand they're on the road. I get it.
Yeah,
but they had a warm-up week.
I'm very curious to see Drake May start the game. I think that was one of the few jobs where throughout the offseason, it was a true 50-50. We didn't know who it was going to be between him and Criswell. From what I understand, we'll probably see both of them, but I'm real excited to see Drake May play. And that's one of the games I'm not going to take 5 on it. I agree with you that I do believe the Tar Heels will get it done there.
Yeah, I like I don't care if it's 1.5 or straight up. I'm taking it. I'm going North Carolina on this. I think North Carolina is going to win, and I would dare say 10 points.
We also might get to see a good helping of their 2 freshman running backs too. Hampton and Petway are both in there, and
look at the running backs. Like they've done such a great job producing running backs to the NFL. And granted, you can sit there and argue and say, "Oh, they gave up 2 the same year, and then they got a transfer from Tennessee who is already a stud," and blah blah blah. Yeah. But they keep
that's the game. Backs. That's the game now. Getting studs from other places is a viable way to replace.
Getting these running backs, they have no issue bringing them in. I think I like North Carolina in this one. I could not believe my very eyes when I saw North Carolina is the underdog to Appalachian State.
Yeah.
So, what does that say about what Vegas thinks about the Sun Belt right now, though? Like looking at some of these lines, we'll probably end up getting into it a few other times. There are some really surprising lines on Sunbelt teams.
I think it speaks to the overall parity of college football. And a lot of people, I think people that don't look at all the a lot of people don't look at all 100+ teams like we do. They look at the top 10 and they see, well, Alabama and Georgia and Clemson, Ohio State go to the playoffs every year. They do. They're the best. But if you go from the history of college football from the late 1800s up to the 1980s, there was 8 teams to 12 teams every year that were good. That was it. They got everybody. You could roster 95 guys on scholarship then. Their third stringers would have started for most other schools. There was zero parity. Now you can't scholarship that many, and guys want to go play. And one of the biggest benefits for the G5 teams has been Tuesday and Thursday night football at ESPN because you can be seen on national TV.
Yeah.
Evening
out that playing field. Yeah.
Yeah. There's more parity than there's ever been.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So I think, and the transfer portal, I think, will only increase that parity. It will give us a situation where we'll use Alabama, where they're going to get, those teams are going to get some absolute studs to fill gaps. But most of the guys that use the portal are going to go down, per se, to a team where they're going to start for. Mm-hmm. It's not going to go the other way. It will, and sometimes Nick Saban said it's going to happen.
It has. Yeah. There's been a bunch of FCS players that have jumped up, to the FBS level or even to Power 5 schools. Alabama pulling people.
It's interesting you say the FCS guys going to FBS. I was on Locked On Longhorns a few weeks ago to talk with them about the transfer portal. And I did my homework because that was one of the questions they were going to ask because they got the backer from James Madison. And
who is now an FBS team, by the way, but just saying. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. But he asked about FCS to FBS guys. And less than 2% of the overall transfers were FCS to FBS. So percentage-wise, it is relatively not relevant. It's very rare.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
And that's FBS on the whole, not even talking P5.
Yeah, you're right. And I like I like the guys that did make the jump.
Yeah.
Just guys coming to mind is the kid Bless Harris, who went I think to Florida State, and
Jared Verse went to Florida State from Albany. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Verse, and he was okay. John Paul Flores, who went to Virginia. From Dartmouth, I think. So they're.
I'm blanking on his name, but Missouri has the interior lineman who was at Montana State too. Good player. Mm-hmm. I can't think of his name, but he.
Yeah, and there were a bunch of there were a few that made that jump. And they were all special in their own right. They had reason to make that jump.
Diamante Tucker Dorsey was the guy at Texas I was talking about.
Gotcha.
I felt bad.
Isaiah Land was this close to making the jump.
Yep. Yeah, he was.
And that fucked him over because he should have done it because he ends up having to sit week 1 because of their compliance office issues. Which we were talking about that last week on here, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the Florida A&M coaches not football coaches, but another sport, I believe volleyball, women's volleyball, responded to my tweet and explained basically that there's one person that runs the compliance office, quote unquote.
Yeah, when I was a grad assistant at Northwestern State, a fellow FCS team, it was one guy. Yep, he was fantastic. But
that's the thing is normally you're not playing that week 0 game, and you have that extra week to get all that eligibility shit pushed through.
But even though FCS is D1, it's not the limelight, man. Their resources are scant. We had full-time assistant coaches making less than $40,000 a year. I mean, you're doing it as a stepping stone to get the next job.
Yeah, no, that's exactly, and I think that's kind of what the issue with the compliance office is there now too, and that's the problem. I think is you're a small school and you're trying to schedule, a big game on week 0. You're not setting up your program for success, and I think that was the mistake here that Florida A&M made, and the players are still protesting. I don't know if you read about this.
I actually didn't see that they were still protesting.
Oh, yeah, they're protesting.
I knew they were. I didn't know it was still going on.
Until these issues are addressed and until the board, the athletic board, and so the director and all those communications, everybody on the top starts taking care of their athletes, they will be kneeling during their school fight song.
Okay.
As a team, that is what's going to be going down. So
that's an interesting one. Yeah.
It was interesting. I was reading about it. I believe it was on, actually, believe it or not, on our sponsor, Draft Diamonds. They were talking about it as well. But so that's the issue. That's what happened last week, and that's why so many of those players had to sit. Isaiah Land probably should have transferred to LSU because he'd be playing right now. Well, he'd be playing on Sunday against Florida State, and he'd probably be starting with Ali Gay on the other side, and that would just be a terrifying lineup. And just thinking about him rotating with BJ Ujulare, and I think they have another edge rusher over there that's really just insane.
I know Florida A&M plays Sunday this weekend too. They're they're not tomorrow.
Yeah, they've got the Tennessee State game. Yep.
No, I think it's Jackson State. I think they're playing Coach Prime. Pretty sure.
No. It's Tennessee State's playing. They're playing. Tennessee State's playing Coach Prime.
Yep, because I think Florida A&M and Jackson State are playing at the Dolphin Stadium in Miami.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's a Sunday.
Well, they better have those guys ready to play. They better have that eligibility pushed through by now.
And then Jackson State has all the drama now because have you been keeping tabs on the city maintenance? The water in Jackson is not drinkable now, so they had to get all kinds of So obviously you can't have a football practice if you don't have running water. So they had to do all kinds of stuff and bring bottles in, and it was a whole supply chain fiasco for the team trying to just practice because they're basically in a Flint, Michigan situation now where the water's not drinkable in Jackson.
That's unfucking believable.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, hey, That's no, I hadn't seen anything about that yet. That's unreal.
Should I move on to my game?
Sir.
My game too.
Yeah, your game too, good sir. Let's see what you
Okay.
got. Is this going to be another one of those picks where we're going to?
I don't.
Me and
I
Eric
actually
is going to disagree with you.
I think you'll agree with me. I think most of the people in our part of the country may disagree, but I like the Ducks to cover 17.5 against Georgia.
Oh man, yeah. See, I didn't want to touch that.
That's a big spread. It's one of those games I didn't want to talk about, but I felt like it's too big of a game for us to not touch on. So I felt like, I got to make a pick on it. And based on how UGA is going to run the ball a lot, they're going to play good D, they're going to eat the clock away. It's tough to win by 3 touchdowns against a decent team when you're doing that.
Not just any decent team either. It just happens to be that this team is head coached by the man who was your defensive coordinator last year.
Yes. Also, and a QB that you know pretty well too.
Yeah, everything's familiar.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, in terms of talent, you got an SEC quarterback now, Bo Nix.
Yeah.
Shout out to Auburn and their greatness under Bo Nix. That was such a fun time. But yeah, so he's now at Auburn. That's going to be a much better fit for him.
He's now at Oregon. He's now at Oregon.
Oregon, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Oregon. Yeah, he's at Oregon. Yeah. He said, fuck you, Auburn. Yeah. I don't need the SEC. And now he gets to play Georgia, which is, the team that he was probably trying to avoid playing by leaving Auburn. But I believe they have Georgia this year. Auburn has Georgia, right? I'm pretty sure that's happening this year.
I was actually just looking at Auburn's schedule.
I think they do. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong, but I think I remember seeing
I'm drawing Auburn up right now. Auburn plays Georgia October 8th in Athens.
Yeah, see, like he was like, yeah, I'm not getting any of that. I'm transferring out. Oh, hey, Oregon, that looks like a great place to go. And
Auburn has a rough stretch there. You have LSU at Georgia, at Ole Miss, Arkansas in a row.
Yeah, that's gonna be a killer stretch.
An easy month, yeah.
But no, so I think that's kind of the thing here is, if I had to make a pick on it, which I really don't want to, but like you said, it is a big game. You do have to kind of cover it. Yeah, I would have to say I agree. I think Oregon covers that spread. I think that Georgia is going to throw the ball a good bit more than we're anticipating, though, because we're sitting here talking about the running backs, and they got some great ones. Kenny McIntosh is basically just another, Kenyon Drake.
It's a fair comparison. Yeah, I like that.
I mean, dude, it's uncanny. It's like I was watching him because I was studying for running back rankings for NFL Draft Blitz, and it was like my first assignment. So I had a good grasp on the running backs. I knew the NFS had put Kenny McIntosh as a top 25 prospect entering the year, and I wanted to take a look at that. And so I got around to him, and I looked, and I think the biggest thing that kind of stood out to me was he doesn't run well between the tackles. Kenny McIntosh is a guy that you have to get outside of the tackles. You got to get him in space, let him use his speed, and he's a great kick returner because he does that. Sorry to go Ben Shapiro style here, with the really fast talking. And so that's the thing is, it's like McIntosh is he's such a great athlete. His measurables are basically exactly the same as Kenyon Drake. Like they are built identically. It's uncanny just how close of those two players are. Receivers out of the backfield, they can do pass protection, but you cannot run them between the tackles effectively. But Georgia's got a rotation; they can do that. They're going to be just fine doing it. But I think,
and they lost some O linemen, but both on the O and D line, Kirby has recruited a ton of depth there. So I expect them to fill those gaps. In fact, I think they're starting. I don't think they start any seniors on the O-line.
No, they don't. And
Cedric Van Pran is a guy that's really good. He'll be fun to watch.
And that's the other thing too is, when you look at how they ran that defensive line specifically last year, they ran it like it was a hockey team. They were running shifts. And they had guys on shifts, and they would run 3, 4, 5 snaps, and then they would, and maybe not even that. There were some lines for running 2, 3 snaps, and then they're off the field, and here comes a new set. And that was very effective for them last year because they're so deep. And yeah, they surrendered so much to the draft, but comes back. But yeah, no, I think that you have a good point. They're going to throw. I just think that Georgia's going to throw the ball a lot more than anybody's anticipating they're going to.
And I certainly think Georgia's going to win the game.
Yeah, no, I don't think Oregon has a fucking chance at this. They could dream of great things happening, and I don't think that anything great's happening in this game, even in their dreams. It's they can't imagine it going well for them.
Yeah, but I think they cover. What about your second game? What do you have?
Yeah, so my second game, we're gonna go SEC action here too. And I can't believe that the spread has not moved. I thought this spread would move all week. So basically, because I took Pitt 6.5 on Monday, and hit it last night because it moved to 7.5. And so everybody that bet on late on Pitt yesterday, they lost out. I didn't because I got on it early. But I thought this would be a line that would move early, and it's not. So Cincinnati is going into Arkansas tomorrow, and Arkansas is favored by 6.5. And I really like Arkansas here.
Yes,
I really like Arkansas, and I think that it's because Cincinnati, I know we want to talk about them being a relevant national team now. They're not. And here's why I think that, because they lost all of their secondary to the NFL draft. I mean, all of it. The only guy that returns is kind of like a rover safety, and that's Arquon Bush. You've got your star edge rusher is gone. Your linebackers are gone. All these guys went through the Senior Bowl last year. Brian Cook is there. Gardner, Sauce Gardner, he goes 4th overall in the pick. In the draft. You got, what's his face, the other corner that Kobe Bryant. Yeah. So Kobe Bryant, he's in the league too, 4th round pick. Okay, so all these guys are gone, and then you lose your longtime starting quarterback who you built that entire team around. You lose your running back. And I'm looking at the pieces here, and I understand Ben Bryant transfers back into the program. He was with the program. Yes. He came out as a freshman with them, goes to Eastern Michigan, comes back,
yeah,
to play quarterback. And I understand all that. I'm just looking at the roster going, Cincinnati lost so many pieces. We've never seen a group of 5 team have the success that Cincinnati did in the modern college football playoff era. And we've never seen a team remotely anywhere close to them being successful lose that many pieces and come back as strong the next year. And that's the bet that we're making with this Arkansas game, because Arkansas did not lose all these pieces last year. Their quarterback is back. Their running backs are back. They lost their wide receiver, but they got guys to replace them. They got Trey Knox. They got a deep tight end group.
Jaden Hazelwood transferred in from Oklahoma.
Exactly. And Hazelwood, this is going to be probably his breakout year. He looked great in the spring. They've been ranting and raving about him. That defense is back. You lost rotational pieces on your defensive line. You lost one of your linebackers. You had 2 of them. You lost a corner.
And your linebacker you replaced with Drew Sanders, a transfer from Alabama, who was a highly rated coming in. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you look at Arkansas, and this is a team that got better than they were last year.
Yeah.
Cincinnati is not a team that was better than they were last year. They're not even close to where they were last year. And I don't need to see them take the field to know that. Because you cannot replace that kind of production on offense and defense and expect to come back and be something.
And Arkansas, in their 2 years with Sam Pittman, they've opened the season well. He's, I think, been a pretty good coach, during fall camp, and then, whenever they've had long breaks, like going into the bowl game. He's getting them prepared well when they have those extended times off. So
absolutely, and that's the other thing. I'm glad you brought that up, because they've looked great. So that's why I like Arkansas minus 6.5. I've hammered this. I've got this in parlays. I've got this in round robins this week. I am excited about this game. I think it's going to be great. So, your game number 3, good sir. Where do you have us taking?
A tough one. Another game that I was somewhat scared at, but I decided to go with NC State, the Wolfpack, minus 10 against ECU. I like the Pack to cover.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit, because East Carolina is kind of one of these American Conference teams that are due for a big year. And I think that's probably why the spread's as close as it is right now. They've got their quarterback coming back, Ehlers, right?
Holton Ahlers, who's in his 14th year of college football. Yep.
He's been playing. Yeah, he was. I remember last year looking at him going, okay, this guy's been here too long already.
Yeah.
Joel Klatt made a really good point last night during the Penn State Purdue broadcast, which was a great game. If you didn't see that, that was an amazing game. During the broadcast, he said, it's a strange relationship being an experienced quarterback in college football now, because if you are an experienced quarterback, it's because you were not good enough to leave. And that's kind of the issue. That's kind of the place where East Carolina finds themselves entering this game.
Yeah.
On the other side, I like North Carolina State, so I like your pick. I like this.
Devin Leary's a good player. Devin Leary's played a ton of college football.
But he's a guy he can play the quarterback position.
Yeah. Fair Thomas, Devin Carter. He's throwing to guys who he's thrown to a lot.
Yeah, well. and the defense too. So by the way, that spread has moved to -12 right now.
Yeah.
That is -12.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's moved 2 points today alone. Okay, so because I know this morning it was 10 this morning, and right now it is 12. It might get up to 13.
I think on their 11-man starting defense, I think they have 5 graduates. So that's not to say they all grad transferred in there, but 5 guys who've already graduated college. That's how old some of their guys on D are.
Well, yeah, they have a great. I like both the linebackers are really good. Drake Thomas. Yep. There's another one I can't think of his name right now.
Isaiah Moore is the other one.
Yep, that's him. Yep. They've been there for a long time. They understand the system. They've got a really good secondary. I like Shane Carter a lot. Yep. And the defensive line is going to be solid too. So I'm really surprised the spread is as close as it is. Yeah. I agree with you. I think that's going to be a big game.
Dave Doran's one of those underrated coaches too, I think, in a sense that he's always consistent. They're always winning games. He may not be, he's not flashy, and he's an old school guy. And not to say that they're ever going to be great enough for him to get an elite top 10 job, but he's a guy that will be able to be there for a long time, and they'll probably miss him when he's gone.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's very fair. And but I like that spread. I think that's a good pick. I'm not going to put any 5 points on it.
Yeah.
I think for my number 3, I like BYU. They're opening up against South Florida tomorrow. And that game will be on ESPNU at 4 p.m. Eastern. And they're ranked 25th in the country, and they are favored by 11.5 right now on the road against South Florida. And I looked at this. So don't get me wrong. I think South Florida is going to be a very competitive team this year in the American. I think they've been building quietly.
They better be, or else their coach, Jeff Scott, is going to get fired.
Oh, yeah. Jeff Scott will be gone if they're not. But I think they really – Jeff Scott is a former Dabo guy, right? Worked with Dabo. Yes. Comes out from his system. He basically went against his boss, his former boss, in philosophy this past year, and hammered the transfer portal.
Oh, they sure did.
Yeah. Hammered the transfer portal. And so they had a really good recruiting class come in, too, by American Conference standards. They had a bunch of 3-stars that came in that were high 3 stars. They're deep right now. They're young, but they're deep. The only issue I think they still kind of have, I think, is their quarterback. I don't think –
I like the Jerry Bohannon transfer. I'm for them. I think that's a good get. Getting him from Baylor.
So every time I turn on the Baylor offense last year, and I watch him throw the ball, I just shake my head. I'm just like, oh my god.
His accuracy is not good.
No,
he throws the deep ball pretty well. I mean, his arm helped Tyquan Thornton get drafted where he did.
Well, Tyquan Thornton helped Tyquan Thornton get drafted where he did. Jerry Bohannon didn't have too much to do with that because nobody knew. Did you see anybody talking last year about Tyquan Thornton? Like, oh man, that guy's so fast. He's going to run a 4.2 40. Did you see anybody say that last year? No. We thought he was fast. We didn't know he was that fast.
That's true.
So I think Jerry Bohannon is to blame for that. Because normally, if you get a guy with speed, he's got speed because you're watching the dude throw the ball as far as he can, and then he's running under it. And you're like, oh my god, that guy can fly. And we didn't see that from Tyquan Thornton last year. I liked Thornton. Like I was talking about him in November, on Twitter, talking about, hey, this is a really good receiver, and people aren't talking about him. I don't know how fast he is, I said, but I'm like, this guy, he's big, he's physical, he's got enough speed to be something. I like him. But no, BYU, people don't really understand just how good BYU is going to be this year. They had a good year last year. They were an 11-win team. They won their bowl game and got to 11 wins. With this Jaron Hall kid playing quarterback, we're going to be talking about in January and February when he probably enters into the NFL draft. And he's a junior, I guess, by probably senior by actual years, but eligibility-wise, he's got 2 years left after this, or with this year, so it makes him a junior. And so Jaron Hall has an arm. He has a cannon.
Yep, good player.
Is unreal. And he's athletic. He's kind of like a do I want to say a more mobile Zach Wilson? Maybe better arm than Zach Wilson?
I don't know that he throws a better deep ball. The accuracy may be
I think
better.
I like it. I like them better. At least at where they were at these points of their career, so like when you look at Zach Wilson as a sophomore, it was like, oh, okay, there's some potential there. There could be something good.
Yeah, he's a guy, definitely, when he was a sophomore, we didn't expect him to turn into what he did. To his credit, he really
Hall has that step on Zach Wilson, where you watched him last year as a sophomore, and you're like, this dude can play quarterback.
Yeah.
Like this is another really good quarterback, and he's going to be better than the guy that just went in the first round last year. But
I'm actually not prepared to say that yet, that he's going to be better. But I think he's a very good player.
Yeah, no, and so I don't think people are giving him enough credit. That defense comes back really strong this year too. I think that they're going to kill South Florida tomorrow. As much as I like them.
You know me and loving to prop up those transfer portal guys. I will also say BYU did get Kingsley Sumataya, the top offensive lineman in the transfer portal.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Who was at Oregon.
Yeah, 5-star kid. Oh, man, yeah, that's right.
Actually, in their early season depth charts, they don't have him listed as a number one, but I don't know that will last. Wouldn't see a guy like him sitting on the bench too long.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too.
I mean, he looks like an NFL right tackle with his body makeup and the way.
Well, that's the thing is they got a couple of them. Clark Barrington's really good on that offensive line too. He's probably going to go in the first few rounds next year. But BYU's stacked again. They're a better team, I think, this year than they were last year, and so I like them 11.5 over South Florida.
Yeah, so do I. And I think South Florida's improved, as you do as well, but I think BYU covers that.
Yeah. It might be 20, honestly. Your game number 4, good sir.
The big spread, the biggest spread that I'm picking. I like the Sooners to cover 31.5 over UTEP. That's a big spread. I'm not. I don't want to say I'm not high on Oklahoma. I've been vocal this offseason in disagreeing with some of the Oklahoma fans in the way they've handled the coaching change.
The real reason why you got on Locked On Longhorns.
No, it was just a happy coincidence. But I do think Dylan Gabriel's good. Eric Gray is good. Their receivers are good. They have a lot of good players on that team. And UTEP, like we talked about last weekend, against the teams that are way better than them, they almost always get killed. They beat the teams worse than them and lose to the teams better than them. Now, I don't think winning and losing is the issue here. Is Oklahoma going to cover that 31.5? I picked them to do it. I don't know why, I just did. I think to me it feels like one of those games that is 55-14, 65-17, something like that. So I think they cover that 31.5.
Yeah, I don't want to touch it. Because like we talked about last, I thought that UTEP had a really good chance of beating North Texas last week. I really did. And I thought winning straight up was probably an option. I think I actually picked them to do that. We might have both have done that one, but they got killed instead, and it was kind of weird. So my reluctance to really pick against that is basically based on I'm still computing that loss last week and trying to figure out what this team is, because at this point I have no idea. But I think that's a good point. They do normally lose those games, so that makes sense, actually.
But again, I mean, at 31.5, the margin for error is so slim for Oklahoma. Almost everything will have to go right. But I'll pick them.
No, I think that's fair too. Because they do have a good offense, and Brent Venables is a defensive guy, and I don't think they're going to have any issues there.
Yeah, and I do think Jeff Levy's a good offensive coordinator. He was at Ole Miss with Lane before. If nothing else, they will run the ball effectively as he always has. But another caveat to that is at 31.5, if you run the ball too much, you run out of time to cover. So,
I think they're going to sling the ball all over the place. I really do.
I don't think in the second half they'll throw much, though.
Yeah, but I think when you bet on a big spread like that, you're betting on them hitting it in the first half and then just kind of piling on in the second.
That's fair.
But feelings, because like when I took Tennessee 34.5 over Ball State yesterday, I was betting on them hitting that at before halftime, which that's what happened. They were up by 38 at the half, and then just kind of bringing the backups in and piling on a little bit more. And I think that was the bet. So I think when you're betting on a spread like that, that's what you're kind of betting to happen. So this is a little bit of a different one than I've got. And it was surprising to me when I saw the spread. But Texas State is on the road playing Nevada this week, and they are favored by a point. So Nevada is an underdog to Texas State. And I looked at that and thought, I understand that Texas State, they got some people coming back, but it's Texas State. Okay, so and Nevada just got their warm-up round in, and hopefully have figured out their quarterback situation, because they played both of them last week. They played the Oklahoma State kid we talked about. He came in, he started the game, played basically to halftime, and then they played the other guy the second half. The 6'8" guy.
Yes.
Yeah, he's huge.
Yeah. He's absolutely massive. Yeah. Almost certain he's the tallest QB in FBS.
They said he's the tallest ever to start a game. At the quarterback position, in college football. But so I like Nevada. I like Nevada winning this one straight up. Maybe I'm crazy, but it's a home game. They've had a game to warm up. This is Texas State's first game, and I just don't think Texas.
I think the Wolfpack win this one as well.
I don't think that Texas State has anything special for me to sit here and go, they should be favored by a point. I don't see that at all. I think Nevada comfortably wins this one. At least I would say by a touchdown, but just to be safe, a field goal. I'd probably go -3.5.
Yeah, Texas State's an interesting team. I know they might be in a tough situation, like conference recruiting wise. They're not going to get those top guys, but I thought Jake Spavital would do a little better than he has there. He'd been a West Virginia assistant offensive coordinator, but he's done a poor job as head coach. He's probably only won about a quarter of his games there, and I expected them to be a little more competitive and better since he's been there.
Now there is a shout out that we have to make to Texas State is while we're shit talking them, because there's a lot of NFL guys that are all over one of their offensive guards. I'm pulling up his name, make sure I get this right, because this is a big one to get right. They're in the Sun Belt, right? Texas State.
They are in the Sun Belt. Yes.
Because that's one of those obscure teams that you get mixed up with, and you start thinking,
are they with absolutely Conference USA? So again, when I was at Northwestern State, they were in the Southland with us. They were still in FCS at the time.
Kyle Hergel is the offensive guard.
That's right. Yes.
NFL teams are all over this guy. I mean, all over him. They love him. They think he's going to be a great football player at the next level. He could potentially go in the first for like I think second or third rounds is kind of what they're thinking right now. Like I mean, they are all over this guy. They love him. So that's a heads up about him. But that's going to be the intrigue for the NFL with that game. They like him a lot. And they think he's going to go. So, but even I just don't think that a guard, looking at a guard and a wide receiver, I guess Marcel Barbie is there. I don't see anything that sits there and go, oh yeah, now Texas State's going to win that game.
Their QB Lane Hatcher, former Arkansas State, former Alabama QB, he'll be taking the snaps for them. So
that's probably what Vegas is betting on. That's probably what it is. But I think Nevada's the better thing here. So
yeah, I agree.
Your game 5, good sir. This may be the other one that I disagree with and put 5 points on.
Okay, so
we're going hack game.
We are.
Oh no!
I like the Fighting Irish to cover that 17.5.
Oh no! Okay, actually, so tell me why. Why do you like the Irish covering 17.5 over Ohio State?
Because they're a good team. They're a really good team. They won't win the game. Not a chance. But it takes a lot to beat a decent team like that by 3 touchdowns. And I just don't see it happening. Notre Dame has a good O-line, a QB who's played some, the best tight end in the country, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought in the best safety transfer in the country.
From Northwestern, yep.
Correct, yep. And the Irish, they're going to be a good team. I mean, they're a team, I think they're going to win 10 games probably. And
with the schedule they have?
I think they're good. I really do. Now, that schedule's a bear.
Yeah, it's a bitch is what it is. It's more than a bear.
Yeah. But, you have on D, you Cross and Adam Alola are good D tackles. They're going to be tough to run the ball inside on. Leofold Bertrand, pretty good linebackers. Kaiser, and like we talked about, Brandon Joseph, good in the defensive backfield.
Okay, so you've got obviously Ohio State this week because we're talking about the game.
Yeah.
You've got at North Carolina, BYU in Las Vegas. Yeah. Now, Stanford, I don't know. We don't know where Stanford is right now, but
we don't. They're one of the it goes
that
under
could be a problem.
It goes under the radar though. How fast Stanford has fallen off the wagon. They were 10-win team going to New Year's Day Bowls. Now they're barely winning 4 games a year.
Yeah, it's unreal. But
it's interesting. Our buddy Thor and I have talked about this a few times. The correlation, their O-line coach, when they were winning all those games, was Mike Bloomberg, who went to Rice as the head coach. He can't win as a head coach, and Stanford's gotten worse since he's left. But together they were great. So who knows?
Clemson, Boston College, and at USC in 3 of your last 4 games.
I only see 3 wins out. 3 losses. Oh, so tomorrow.
Ohio State. Yeah.
Yep. And Clemson, probably. That's a coin flip. Where is that game this year, by the way?
It's in Notre Dame is going to be at home. So Clemson will be going up there.
That's a coin flip. It's a losable game. It's a winnable game. And
that's the last week of the year, USC, at USC.
So that's a big one. I think by that point in the year, USC has it figured out. And all that's
exactly what I'm thinking. Yeah.
And I think all their new moving parts will be doing well together. So we'll chalk that one up as a loss.
I think Boston College is a really tough game too, to be honest.
They typically have played Notre Dame well, and I'm a big Jeff Hafley fan. I think he's a heck of a coach.
Yeah.
But
I'm a big Jurkovec fan, so he's the quarterback there. I think he's going to be a good quarterback.
He a former Notre Dame QB, by the way. But I do like Notre Dame to get the win in that one, even though BC plays them tough.
But yeah,
it's Flowers is a good receiver. Yeah, he'll be a fun guy to watch this year.
That is a brutal schedule, man. That is brutal. That's really hard to get through. So that's my concern with Notre Dame this year.
Yeah.
So to talk about tomorrow, it is interesting. I've been watching some Notre Dame guys here recently, doing some studying because, like we mentioned, the defensive line, specifically Isaiah Foskey, he's a really great edge rusher, and I think he's really going to have a good year. But so here's kind of the interesting thing: is we're talking about C.J. Stroud being a Heisman candidate. We're talking about the running back Henderson being a Heisman candidate. I think CBS Sports, one of their analysts during their preseason show predicted that Stroud would finish first and Henderson would finish third in Heisman voting, and I was like, okay.
It's not to say they won't be the first and third most deserving guys, but it's ignorant of the way regional voting works for the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. But so that's kind of what I'm getting at is there's a lot of hype around this Ohio State team, right? There's a ton of hype,
as there should be. They're fantastic.
They have a good offense, and they have the best receiver coach in the country, and he's been pumping receivers out left and right, which is a lot of credit to them. Brian Hartline has become, Brian Hartline was a great NFL receiver, very underrated NFL receiver. Not a lot of people appreciated what he did, especially in those few years when he was in Miami, putting up the biggest numbers of his career.
Yeah.
But he has become a great coach. He is an unbelievable recruiter, and he brings in some great guys. And, we're going to see Marvin Harrison Jr. playing this year over there. And obviously Smith Najigba will be there.
Julian Fleming and Egbuka are solid players too.
Yeah, I know. Like they're loaded. They're stacked at wide receiver. But so here's my biggest question is, number one, we're always talking about Ohio State defense. Ohio State is known for their defense. They think about the great defensive players that come through there. The great A.J. Hawk, Chase Young, the Bosa brothers. There's always great defenders at Ohio State. And you look at this defense right now, give me one guy on this defense. Name me one player on this defense.
So I could have only named you two, and one of them is because of my fascination with the transfer portal. They brought in Tanner McAllister from Oklahoma State, who followed Knowles, the D coordinator.
Okay.
And the other one was JT Tuimoloau, just because he was one of the elite recruits in the country 2 years ago, redshirted last year. He'll probably start for him on the D-line tomorrow as a redshirt freshman.
But that's the point.
Exactly. No, it's a valid point. Yeah.
And the only other guy that I can think of that you didn't name was Taron Vincent.
Yep.
And that's because that's Troy Vincent's son, the head of the NFLPA. And he's on their defensive line.
Okay.
So my point is, this is not an Ohio State defense that we're typically used to seeing. They're not. The other thing is, we're always talking about Ohio State offensive line. They always have a great offensive line, blah, blah, blah. Oh, man, everybody on that offensive line is going to the NFL. There might be one guy on that offensive line going to the NFL.
Paris Johnson's good.
Yeah, Paris Johnson's good. And that's going to be the matchup. It's going to be him and Isaiah Foskey tomorrow. But who else is on that offensive line right now?
And the thing about that is, and you could make the case that it's because they've been so good that the depth there has been unreal. But they're not a young O-line. I think they're starting 3 seniors, but guys that haven't played a ton of their career so far.
Going consulting the Phil Steele guide here.
Okay. Because I know they have on their right side it's both Joneses.
Matthew Jones.
Yeah.
DeJuan
and I think DeJuan is the other one. Yeah.
Yep. Paris Johnson, obviously.
Yeah.
Starting left tackle. Left guard be Donovan Jackson.
Okay.
Donovan Jackson was the Phil Steele's number 4 offensive lineman a few years ago.
Do they have Luke Whippler as the starting center? Is he
Luke Whippler is the starting safety.
Yeah.
The center. Yep.
He was a high recruit too.
Yeah, they're all high recruits, but there's no experience outside of Paris Johnson.
Yeah.
Paris Johnson's the only guy who's experienced on here. It's the only thing that's the only player we really know anything about. So basically, what we're doing here, when we're talking about Ohio State and the great numbers that this offense is going to produce and everything, is we are projecting.
Yeah.
We are projecting that this offense is going to be great this year. We don't know it yet.
No.
I'm not saying they're not going to be. I'm just saying that There's gonna be. Remember the problems they had last year, the first couple weeks of the season.
Yeah.
It lasted like 3 weeks. It was the first 3 games.
They didn't look good offensively against Oregon early in the season last year.
No, and they lost that game to Oregon.
Yeah.
Oregon walked into their house and beat them.
Yeah.
In Columbus. Early game slate. Everything was stacked against Oregon, and they did it last year.
They did.
Because if you remember, because when Chip Kelly was at Oregon, they had that agreement where they were not playing any games in the early time slot because that was 9 a.m. local time when those games were.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was a 9 a.m. kick local time.
Yeah.
And they beat Ohio State in Columbus. That's what I'm saying is it's like you have so much hype that you're putting on these players. The expectations are here. Last year they were here. This year they're way up here. Okay. And there's a lot of unknowns on the defense, on the offensive line. We're projecting that these receivers have looked good, and we're fine with that. Okay, I can agree with that. The running back looks great. They always have a really good, stable running back. C.J. Stroud looked like he was a pretty good quarterback last year. But I'm looking at the trenches, and I'm going, advantage Notre Dame on both sides of the ball. Yeah. The advantage is Notre Dame. As much as Ohio State fans, and my best friend is an Ohio State fan, so shout out to him and everything, and I love you, buddy. But he lives up in Columbus and all that. But I'm just saying, man.
And I think Ohio State wins. That's another one, like we got in with the I forget one of the other games we were talking about, but I think the Buckeyes win. I just don't think they cover. I think Notre Dame covers at 17.5.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to agree with you on that one. Actually.
Or Oregon was the other one because I think Oregon loses but covers, and Notre Dame's the other one.
Yeah. I think I agree with you on that. I think that's that's a good prediction. When things coming loose. There we go. All right, good. But yeah, my last game that I have on my slate is it's my biggest spread, and it's a big spread. And I'm taking the underdog. I'm taking the 37.5 on Louisiana Monroe because I'm pull this game up because I'm blanking here. Why am I blanking right now?
So it's before you while you're drawing up whatever you're looking at, I will say I like the Warhawks to cover this one. I briefly chatted with Jonathan, the Locked On Longhorns guy, this week, and
Texas.
Yeah.
That was 37.5 over Texas. Sorry, sorry. That's what I wrote my notes. I had plus 37.5 ULM, and I'm like, and I couldn't remember who they were playing.
But so obviously most of their listeners think Texas covers that.
Yeah.
He actually sided with us. He thinks Texas probably doesn't cover that big spread. So I guess for all 5 years I agree with you. And we only have
the only one that we disagreed on was your first one.
Houston UTSA, yep.
Yeah, because I think UTSA wins that straight up. So we've got 5 points on the line. You can half it potentially, half the deficit this week. Now,
I will ask for the sake of possibly us going even, a game neither of us picked, but a big game.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a huge game. Now
Utah minus 2.5 at Florida. Who do you like there? That's a tough one, real tough one.
Yeah, that's a. So it's actually gone down to 2. I'm looking at it right now. Okay. That is a 2-point spread right now. It's just like you don't know what to expect. Like, is this Florida team going to be that much better than they were last year?
I know.
And just how good really was Utah last year? Because they had the shootout with Ohio State at the end of the year. They had a really good year. Yeah. A lot of those guys come back this year for them.
And I feel like this year, everyone's picking them to win the North out there. You don't see anybody picking Oregon, Washington State, Oregon State. It seems like everybody's just assuming Utah, USC are going to win the divisions in the Pac-12.
Yeah, it's like I really don't know what to think of that one.
Yeah,
because it's such a coin flip. It's just like I think it's going to be a very close game.
Yeah, I've been on Utah basically the whole offseason in the lead up to this, but the last couple days, I'm kind of going more towards the center. Like Napier's teams have ran the ball really well. Their O line looks pretty good. They have a good running QB. They have several good running backs. They might find a way to eke this one out. I don't know. The swamp's a tough. The swamp's a tough place to go.
I'm not impressed with Anthony Richardson. I haven't been for a long time. Like, when everybody else is talking about, the next great quarterback.
Yeah. I don't think that, but I do think
he gives part of my issue with him is, remember going into the 2021 season, and this was like May of 2021, PFF starts putting out their pre-draft rankings, and in mock drafts like a year in advance, and Emory Jones is up there going like 5th overall. And he's like, quarterback. Oh, Emory Jones has all the tools to be a quarterback 1. I'm going, what fucking tape were you watching to think that this guy is going to go in the first round, let alone be a top quarterback in the class? Especially with some of the guys that were, when we were talking about Kenny Pickett and Matt Corral. And I was like, I just think those guys are way better than Emory Jones. And obviously he has those issues at Florida, transfers out. Anthony. They did the same fucking shit with Anthony Richardson this year. This offseason, going into this May, Anthony Richardson's got all the tools to be a top 5 quarterback. He's going to top 5 pick in the NFL draft.
I'm not buying that. Yeah.
No. He is so far behind schedule as a passer. It's not even funny. Yeah. He's not close to being anything like remotely good as a passer right now. At least maybe he was a college, okay, but like NFL wise. But Cameron Rising on the other side at Utah is a legitimate Senior Bowl prospect. Like when you look like Jim Nagy, when you see the way that he's talking about Cam Rising right now, it's the same way that he's talked about Kenny Pickett over the last couple of years, and the way that he's talked about some of these guys that go into the Senior Bowl and have a big week and go continue on and have another, have a great career. Nagy loved Skylar Thompson. He couldn't get Thompson to get to the Senior Bowl. Okay. Didn't have a roster spot for him. I didn't see it. And then, and this came up because somebody asked me this past week, hey, did you see Skylar Thompson killing preseason the way he did? No, fuck no. I didn't see that coming at all. But Nagy really likes Cameron Rising.
Okay.
And so that kind of tells me that Utah has a quarterback. Because if Nagy likes him, there's probably something there. I know he's got weapons.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, they've got the tight ends. And that defense is always really good. So it's what you're really betting on is Florida going to be that much better with Billy Napier? Or is Utah really lost that much? So I think right now, honestly, because I'm being forced, you have a gun in my head and you're telling me to pick one, I'm going to go Utah. Which is very anti-SEC of me.
That's all right. And it's one of those games for me, there's a reason I didn't pick it was because I was
exactly.
Yeah. Why I brought it up was I was going to be like, if we vehemently disagreed, we could put 5 on that one, but it's too tough to pick, I think.
It's not a game that I would advise people betting on unless you just like watching games for the thrill of losing or winning money. That's kind of one of those games where I threw 5 on Purdue last night. I didn't know if they could just, straight up to see if they would pull it off. Like, I'm not going to put my $25 or $50 bet on Purdue when beating Penn State, but I'll throw 5 on it and see if I can't double it.
Yeah.
It's $5. Who cares? But because I've put together this round robin. Okay, I picked 7 games, and I went by 4s. A lot of the picks that we just talked about are in there, but there's a couple others that I figured I would throw at you and see what you think. Here's your chance to disagree with me and come up.
Fair enough.
The first one that I really liked was Louisville -5.5 over Syracuse tomorrow. And I know that Louisville's on the road. They're going to have to go to Syracuse. They're going to have to go to the Dome. It's a late kick game, 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock Eastern. And so, because I'm in Central, so all my times are Central, so I normally make that adjustment in my head. But Malik Cunningham as a quarterback he's not as athletic, but he draws a lot of similarities to Lamar Jackson. And it's not just because he's wearing the Louisville colors, just like Lamar did. It's not any of that. It's not because he's a black quarterback running around throwing the ball and running like he's, unbelievable. And he's a very gifted athlete. But he's played there well enough and long enough in the system. He's had the consistency with Scott Satterfield. They have good weapons everywhere across the field. Even losing Tyler Harrell to Alabama this year. Yeah, they're going to miss the speed of Harrell because Harrell's going to run like a 4.2 something. It's going to be unreal when he runs the 40.
Yeah.
Assuming that he's healthy, at the combine to run it. But I don't like Syracuse staying with Louisville on this one. I think 5.5 is a very modest spread. I think this is one of those games potentially Louisville just runs away with.
I think what that might come down to will be Sean Tucker's success in running the football for Syracuse.
Yeah.
He's a good running back.
Well, that's the other thing too is
Garrett Schrader's
look at the
QB. I don't think he's great, but Garrett Schrader's okay.
Well, yeah. So the interesting thing about Garrett Schrader too, if you remember, was Louisville played Mississippi State in the Music City Bowl in 2019. Yeah. The only reason that Garrett Schrader did not play in that game was because 3 days prior to the game there was a practice fight where a defensive player, I could name him, but I've managed to go 3 years without naming him, and I promised that grad assistant that I wouldn't say. That told me. But he was the quarterback, and the only reason he didn't play is the defensive player hit him in practice and knocked him out of the game. And so he's been dealing with this guy before he ever came to the ACC. He's familiar with him. They had a really great game plan. They beat the shit out of Mississippi State. If you remember correctly, it was Nick Fitzgerald's last game. Yeah. I was there for that game. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Yeah.
That was the first game I ever had a credential for. Was that game.
Yeah.
And you walk into the booth and you got your fucking name sitting there on the tape on the plaque when you walk up to your seat and you find it and you're just like, oh man, I made it. I'm here. It's a moment. But and that was a wild game too, because at the very end, it was like watching, that Mississippi State team blow that lead the way they did. You just knew Joe Moorhead. He was out the door. It was done. It was over. It went from here to here in the matter of 4 quarters.
Oh.
He lost that job in that game.
Yeah. The other thing with Louisville I'm excited to see is how Tyon Evans does at running back after transferring there from Tennessee. So I think he's a solid player.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I loved watching him last year at Tennessee. Yeah. JUCO prospect, missed all the 2020 season.
He was one of the guys I was kind of surprised at. Not necessarily that he transferred, but then his destination. Like, to me, a lot of the pieces didn't add up there with how that happened.
Jabari Small kind of scared him a little bit, man.
Maybe.
Yeah. It was because Jabari looked great last night.
Yeah, he did.
Jabari looked good. I mean, I granted, it's Ball State, but still, I'm just saying, like, they look like they're ready to run with him as the running back full time. And there's not going to be too much of a rotation. So I wonder if that's what scared him off.
Yeah.
But no, he's a great running back. You got him back there with Malik Cunningham. And Louisville brought in Jermaine Lowell, too, if you remember, from Arizona State. Yep. That's a big addition on the inside. He's reportedly put on 30 pounds this offseason to play nose tackle.
Yeah.
So if he can so that's one of the things I'll be looking for in that game is if he can still move around.
They also brought in Sonogo from Ole Miss at linebacker.
Yeah, too. They did. Yeah. Sonogo's a really good one.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like, you just look at all these pieces, and I'm just like, I'm betting on Sean Tucker not being able to run the ball.
Yeah.
I'm betting on them having a beat on Garrett Schrader and Malik Cunningham just lighting up the scoreboard with all these weapons that he has. I like that. And then the other one I like is Coastal Carolina, 1.5 over Army. And as much as that pains me to say.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised that
Chadwell and McCall. I'm taking them in that game too.
Yeah. With that offense, like, I get it. Like, Army is really great at running that triple option, but the way that the season ended for Army last year, losing that upset to Navy, and then just getting obliterated in the bowl season,
I don't think that they're going to have it to stop Coastal Carolina. A lot of people are writing Coastal Carolina off, which is weird this year. Like they're kind of, oh, well, Appalachian State and whoever the fuck else is in that conference, in that division of them, Marshall.
Tough conference. I mean, I'm not saying it's.
I'm not saying it's not a tough division. I'm just saying,
the Raging
have we
Cajuns
forgotten
are
how
there
good
with
this team is?
Their new coach. Troy's down there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like Phil Steele, for example. Phil Steele has Marshall and Appalachian State finishing ahead of them in the division, and Louisville and Troy, Louisiana and Troy finishing ahead of them in the conference. So, like, he's got them going like 5th, and I'm sitting here going, "What? Have we forgotten how good this team is? This they don't have a lot of NFL players."
Well, so Coastal is in the Sun Belt, but Marshall's back in CUSA now. So some of those teams are a little, there's been some fluidity there with those teams moving.
Marshall's playing in the Sun Belt.
Yes, they are. Yep.
Yeah, which is why they're slated in that, because Marshall just joined. Old Dominion came over.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Came over.
I was trying to think of who else came over. Yeah.
Yeah. There were 4 of them.
Troy's
4 teams that came over.
Troy's still in the Sun Belt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's why those teams that I just named to you are all teams that he's picking to finish better than Coastal Carolina in the Sun Belt.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is confusing as hell, because it's like Marshall has been in the Conference USA for so fucking long, and you just see your Marshall and you're like, oh, Marshall, okay, you're talking Group 5? No, I'm not talking. I'm talking Sun Belt.
Yeah.
I think that's why Vegas has a lot of faith in this conference this year, because there's a lot of really good teams there. But
Georgia Southern is a fascinating team for me. I've said this to many people. Like,
bringing Clay Helton in like that,
going from a triple option team to Clay Helton, like, I have no idea. Well, I shouldn't say that. I kind of have an idea what to expect year one when you have a roster full of guys who are not built to play the offense you want to play.
Yeah.
But we'll see long term what happens. Yeah. If ever there was a guy who the year 0 moniker fit, it's Clay Helton.
Yeah. So if I happen to hit all 7 of these picks, I will take my $35 that I put in this round robin and make 503.
Yeah.
So it'll be nice. Fingers crossed.
I have one more game that I feel like is a total coin flip, and I wanted to see your opinion on it. And that was one of the night games tomorrow. Boise State +4 against Oregon State. That's a tough one.
Yeah, so actually, right now, the line is 2.5.
Okay.
So it has come down Boise State's way.
Okay.
I like Boise.
Okay.
And so the reason I like Boise is because I think Boise's a top 25 team this year. When you look, I understand they just lost Khalil Shakir. I'm sure Froto is going to hate me for saying this because he was such a Shakir fan. Froton over there. Used to be over there with Thor at
yes.
NBC.
Yeah.
So I understand they lost him, but for the most part, that team stayed together really well. And I think Hank Bachmeier is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the entire country right now. He just is. Hank Bachmeier made my all underrated team.
Nice. Very cool.
From a quarterback position, he has one of the most solid bases in all the country right now. Like footwork, the way that his fundamentals work and all that. He is one of the most solid bases, and he's not talked about enough. People don't talk about this guy like as an NFL guy. This is a guy, he's been playing since 2019. Remember the Florida State game in 2019?
Yes, I do. They had a nice comeback. Yep.
Oh my God. I watched that game and I was like, I love this kid. NFL guy someday, and then he kind of fell off and people didn't talk about him. He got hurt in 2020 in the COVID year and blah blah blah. And I think he was dealing with an injury a little bit last year too. But from a base standpoint, this guy is fundamentally solid. So I like him. I don't see anybody at Oregon State that really just blows me. Wow, yeah, that looks great. I understand. Look,
I don't
going in the right direction.
And that's a main reason why, after hearing what you had to say about the Broncos, I will see if you want to go 5 on this game, because I'll take the Beavs.
Oh, okay. Your faith lies in Jonathan Smith.
Yep.
Okay,
and they're, like you said, they're trending better than most teams in the country from a standpoint of where they were when he took over. They were really bad when he took over.
Like it's night and day difference. And that's the thing with that job. You need a guy that is passionate about that place.
Yes.
And if you don't have that guy, you are not going to be successful, because Jonathan Smith, you'll remember that this is so. The only reason I know about this is because when I was a kid, I would go into these used bookstores, and I would hit the sports section, and I would convince my mom to buy me whatever books I could possibly convince her to buy for me. And so like that was how I got my first NFL record and fact book, believe it or not. 2003 NFL record and fact book at this, I think we got it in like 2004 after, the season and stuff. I convinced her to buy that for me. She was like, there's no pictures, you're not gonna like it. I was 7. And I was like, no, I'll read it. I wore the fucking cover off that book. I used that shit all the fucking time. That's it. I did all kinds of stuff. I was crazy nerdy about it. Yeah. So one of the books that I convinced my mom to buy in the store in Coleman, Alabama, little used bookstore, it was in downtown, was it was like a yearbook commemorative edition.
Okay.
Of the Oregon State 2001 season.
Yep. They beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl by a ton that year.
Yep. And so Dennis Erickson was the head coach, and Jonathan Smith was the quarterback. And so that's the only reason I know about this. And I know that's what I was going to say. I know you're going to remember this, but this was before I was watching college football. I know about this
that was success they'd never seen before, because you had Chad Johnson, who was known as Chad Johnson at the time.
Yeah, not Chad Ogotsego. Yeah, you didn't just have him; you had TJ Hushmanzadeh too.
Yep. Like that. And Ken Simonton had a really good year at running back for him too.
Oh yeah, Simon was
the bell cow. Yeah,
yeah, and so that's kind of the thing is, Jonathan Smith worked with a coach that loved that area. Yeah, like Erickson had worked at Washington successfully, and he went to the NFL and it was Seattle. He was the head coach for a while, wasn't he?
He went from Wyoming to Washington State to Miami. Then he went to the Seahawks. Then he went to Oregon State. Then he went to the 49ers as a head coach after that.
Yeah. So then he went that West Coast. He worked all up and down. He loved that area.
Then after the 49ers, he went to Idaho, then to Arizona State. So he's really been all over up in there.
Yeah. So my point basically being, before Jonathan Smith, who was Dennis Erickson's head coach, Dennis Erickson was the last person who gave a shit about that place. As a head, just that area. They didn't really have a notable guy that stood out in that entire 20-year gap. That was just like, they fit here. Like they want to be here. They love this program.
That might be a little hard on Mike Riley, who was he was there for a long time, which is about all we can say. I don't know. I wouldn't say they were great, but Mike was there forever before he went to the NFL.
Okay. Well, so the funny thing was just, before we finish this thing up, Mike Riley obviously coaches here in the USFL, right? And the New Jersey Generals.
That's right. New Jersey. Okay.
Yeah. So the first game, they opened the entire season against Birmingham Stallions.
Okay.
And they have the coaches mic'd up and everything throughout the entire game and stuff, and the quarterbacks are mic'd up and everything. And they would go. It was awesome watching USFL games as a football nerd, because it's just you're hearing the play call lingo, you're hearing them talk on the sidelines. Hey, let's talk about what about this guy? Oh, so it's really deep and it's fun. This guy's out there calling plays, and it was like imagine my grandfather, your grandfather, calling football plays. That's what it sounded. That's what it felt like. And I was like, this team, oh my god! And then they lost to Birmingham, I think, in the end of the game. But you're sitting there watching the game, going, New Jersey's going to be terrible, and they weren't. They were awesome. They had a really good year. They didn't get into the championship game, I don't think, because Philadelphia beat them out for that spot. But
there can't be to talk about Mike Riley. there can't be many active coaches who have been head coaches in FBS, NFL, CFL, USFL, and World Football League. He has to be the only one.
Pretty sure he's the only guy. Yeah,
he has the only guy that's there.
But
yeah,
with all of those credentials. But no, it was funny because it was just funny because you mentioned Mike Riley. I was like, well, I don't see young kids just being like, oh yeah, I want to go play for Mike Riley. No.
Exactly. Yes.
But Jonathan Smith's done a great job with that program. They're definitely trending in the right direction. And but yeah, I'll take your 5 points on that. I like that.
Perfect.
I like Boise State a whole lot more. I think they're a top 25 team, and I don't think Oregon State's quite there yet. So
so we have 10 points tomorrow, just like we had 10 points last Saturday. I like that.
It's a chance I can either double this thing, or you can have it, or you'll come back completely. No. You'll third it, because I'll have to win one. So
yeah.
If I lose one, I'll if it's 1-1, then I'll get 5 points. You'll get 5 points. So,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much wraps us up here on Gridiron Eve. Hope that you guys take some of the tips, get some of the money, make some money in the next few days, and just speed before we sign off. Speed quicks, just first thing that comes out of the top of your head. LSU by 3.5 over Florida State. Is that a yes or a no? First thing that pops out of your head, just say it.
There's a reason I didn't pick it. It's always tough for me to go against the Seminoles, but I might go LSU in that one.
Yeah, I'm an SEC guy.
I do think, and I will say, Norvell had them doing a lot better late in the season than they were early last year. They got significantly better. But you talk about a guy that's taken guff this offseason is Brian Kelly. The guy's a really good coach. Really good. And
I hope y'all have you set.
Exactly. No, that's
oh my God.
My family.
My family.
but Kelly's a heck of a coach. And Denbrock, who was Cincinnati's O coordinator last year, is with him now at LSU. So whether it's Nussmeier or Daniels, I think they get it done. And all we need to do is win by a touchdown. And I think the nod there might just be that it's a Death Valley, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Death Valley. Yeah. 100%. So thank you guys for tuning in, checking out Gridiron Eve, and hope you take the tips and make some money, do all that good stuff. And we will be back at this next week right here, wherever you're watching, from YouTube, Twitch, and from Twitter. And so you can follow him. He's Mike Huessman at Huessman CFB. You can follow me at Draft Vogel. I'm John Vogel, and we will talk to you guys soon.